Hello. A year ago, I quit my career as a pharmacist. At the time, I had about 2,500 YouTube subscribers and I was making about $150 a month. And I had no real plan. I had no plan, actually, of how I was going to be able to make a living doing this and have a business. And in that year, I have done just that. And today, I just want to talk about a little bit about what that process has been like, but really about where I'm at now. Because it's quite vulnerable for me to share these parts of my journey with you and to invite you into my private world in this way because my entire life, I so badly wanted a linear progression in life. And the thing is I've always known what I needed to do to get there. And it wasn't until I got there at 25 years old as a pharmacist that I realized the true cost of all of us who know how to be the successful one, the good one, the kind one, but don't really know how to be ourselves. And the cost of that shows up in different ways for everyone. For me, it showed up as 13 years of excruciating autoimmune illness and chronic pain, anxiety, depression, a feeling of disconnection, no matter how good my life looked. It never felt like it was enough. Because to live up to the expectation of society, it had consequences. And the cost of that was myself. When I left pharmacy, I told myself I will not leave one cage for another because I had taken all of the business courses. I can see what the next steps could be, what the next, linear progression of this looks like. But my body has been telling me something very different for several months. There is such a hyper masculinization that has happened in our society. And we are seeing the breakdown of that in real time out in the world in so many ways. This hyper optimized, hyper aggressive, the linear aspect, the logical understanding of life is the masculine, and we love that. But when it has hijacked the part of us that feels receptive to life, that feels open to life, that enjoys and feels connected to life, when it hijacks that, what's the point? It's so funny because I realized this in my life very early on, and I wish I hadn't, because a lot of people that I watch go to the great heights of success, before they recognize, oh man, I don't think this is going to be what actually fulfills me. And I realized it very early on because I got very sick. So I told myself I will not leave one cage for another. If I'm going to do this business, I'm going to have to do it in my way, with my rules. And that has been much more difficult than I thought. Because the decades of conditioning around, but you know the next step to success. You know what could get you bigger numbers. I'm not silly. I am silly, but I'm not silly in the sense that I can see the numbers, you know? And to live in a way where I see the numbers, I don't avoid them, and I see what people want, and I see that aspect of the relationship, but also having to hold myself and not abandon that at the same time has been deeply difficult, but also incredibly rewarding. The next the next leaders in our world will not be the ones who are focused so deeply on this hyper optimization. I truly believe that. And so I got to kind of walk the talk here. About 6 months in, about November of last year, I started getting this message internally that, yeah, something's got to change. And so I made some changes in my business, but the message kept coming up. And the message I heard again and again and again was, you need more energy available for what's coming through. Because what was happening was I could feel it very intensely in my body. It was very clear. What was happening was I was getting to a certain energy level, and then I was discharging it through making a video, through doing a Substack, through having a client, through running a workshop. Whatever this message was like, that's not enough energy. This arbitrary number, let's say 30%, it's going to require you to sit with 60, 70% in order to get this through. And I remember being like, okay, what is this thing? And that's not how our bodies work. They're not linear. Our bodies are very receptive. Their wisdom doesn't come through and this is what's next for you. Sometimes it does, but most of the times it's a knowing, right? Intuition, symbolic. And as we return to the body again and again and again, we learn how to discern when those are actual signals versus static or noise. And there's no shortcut to that. I really have to tell you, there's no shortcut to that other than returning to your body again and again and again and again. So about 3 months later, I made a decision to cut off my number one revenue, which was one-on-one work, and to take the space that I needed for whatever wanted to come through. I had some evidence that, yeah, I could do it. That I was held not just by my own conviction and this belief that I had to do this, but also the support of people around me, the support of people I've met through this work, the support of the universe, something that I won't ever truly understand. And I kind of love that for me. I love that mystery. And yet it's still not easy. And I don't want you to see this part. I don't want you to see this part. And I think it's important that you do. Not all who wander are lost. And the message that keeps coming through is like, I don't want you to see this as me being lost. That's not how it feels inside. It feels like I'm being guided. I just don't know where. It's like I'm being guided with blindfolds on, but I deeply trust the person guiding me, the feeling guiding me. And this is the feminine. Day in, day out, we are invited to move toward this energy in small and big ways. There is an illusion of safety given to us by society around success and what it needs to look like in order for it to be real. You don't have to follow it because this pattern of self-abandoning, when something in you says, I know that I should do this, but I don't want to, every single time you choose to go against yourself, there is a division. And that division causes a lot of pain. And moving towards individuation, as we call it in Jungian psychology, wholeness is also incredibly painful. And you choose your pain. At some point, you choose your pain. I don't want to skip this part. That's a very foreign feeling. This feeling of like, yeah, I think there's something here, even though it looks like there's nothing here. All of it is a part of your journey. And I'd be lying to you if there aren't days where I wake up and I say, you know what? Let me just find a freaking pharmacy job again. Because listen, it is so much easier, right? But we choose our pain. We choose our pain. So this is the pain I'm choosing. And I recognize how much I consistently can transform that pain into power again and again and again. And every time I choose to trust that, I gain more evidence and confidence in myself and in my body's intuition that I can do it again. And so I don't like to say that it gets easier, but like, I don't know. So if you're in a part of your life that feels confusing, maybe you do feel lost. Maybe you are in the midst of some sort of transition, internally, externally. What would it feel like to invite this energy rather than resist it? What would that even look like for you? How could that change how you move day to day? If you trusted, how would your behaviors change? How would your internal world change, right? We know mentally, right? Logically, we're told it's the inner world that matters. We hear this all the time. But that we don't have a lot of experience about that. When we don't experience it, we don't feel it in our bodies be true, then it just remains up here as awareness. And self-awareness is amazing, but it's not enough. It's not enough. What would it look like to trust your process right now, no matter how beautiful or how difficult it looks? If you're curious about the type of work that I do and want to experience it, I'm actually doing a live gathering with a somatic component. And this has been inspired by my recent silent meditation retreat, inspired by the Theravada Buddhist aspect of generosity, which is donations. And I've kind of changed it to fit my rules so that I don't self-abandon for a system that's important to me. So you can check that out if you'd like down below. What would success be if you defined it for yourself? What does being satisfied and fulfilled in your life actually look like to you? And maybe some of the difficult things that you may be going through right now are literally the doors to that. And in every moment, we have a choice. And sometimes we don't see that because there are so many unconscious behaviors that are driving our day-to-day actions. And that's okay. I'm excited to see what wants to come through. I say that and I just laugh because it's like, we have this idea when we hear those things, oh, something wants to come through, that's got to be this big, massive thing. And maybe it's simply an understanding, a deeply felt experience that comes through in a mundane way. And it's really not that important or not as big as you thought, but it's the piece of the puzzle that you needed right now. And as we move into this new way of being in the world, who are you becoming? What do your actions say about you and the person you are becoming inside of everything that's happening? That's a question that only you can answer. Thanks so much for being here. I'll see you next time.